After years of saving, I finally was able to buy my dream car, a Toyota AE86. Throughout that long journey, and now that I actually own one, I have done tons of research and am here to present my guide on the car. Now first, the elephant in the room. I know some of you are watching this and thinking, Josh, that's not an 8.6. And look, I get it. Many people think 8.6s only came in white with black trim, the iconic panda look. But despite popular belief, there were in fact red 8.6s as well. No, this isn't an aftermarket Mako respray. You could actually get your 8.6 in classic Honda Civic Red from the factory, which is what I have here. So yes, though it's not white, it is still a true 8.6. This confusion over colors is actually how I managed to get this one for so cheap. Since it's a lesson note about color, I was able to get the car for 10 grand, which is a huge steal for an 8.6 in this condition. I mean, the interior hasn't even been torn out yet. The seller simply didn't know what he had when I made my offer. Here, okay, if you still aren't convinced, I'll make it even more obvious. There, you see it now? Now that we hopefully have that confusion out of the way, we can move on. Before we delve into the car, we should look a bit at its history. Though the cool and hip kids call the car by its chassis codename, AE86, or 86 for short, the reason they do this is to hide the fact that the car is actually a Toyota Corolla, not something most people would brag about owning. Being one of the most common car models of all time, the original Corolla began its life in the 1960s as a compact, affordable economy car. To this day, the line has kept to this concept, and you see many of them out on the road being driven by people who just want a car to work versus one with passion and soul. What we have here is one of the 1980s Corolla models, the AE86. Keeping to its namesake, the car was designed to be a simple, utilitarian vehicle, including back seats and a spacious trunk. So why is it that this old 80s Corolla with worn paint and dents is worth more than most other higher spec 80s cars on the used market, and even some modern day cars? Well, it's because you can do this. Yep, the 8.6 is the ultimate drift machine. It's crazy to think that after decades of advancement in technology, nobody has managed to manufacture a car better at sliding through corners than Toyota in the 80s. I can't think of any other piece of technology from the 80s that can even come close to compete with its modern day counterpart. Except maybe some music, but I mean, that isn't really technology anyways. The car is a classic front engine, rear-wheel drive layout, and if you look under the hood, you get a small little 1.6 liter inline 4. So what makes it so special then? Sounds pretty much the same as a Miata, but you don't hear any immature children calling 8.6 owners gay. Well, the 8.6 has a little something special up its sleeve, something I call a Supra power. This phrase I'm coining originates from the Mark IV Toyota Supra, the iconic one we all know and love. Though the stock turbo Supra only makes around 300 horsepower, Toyota managed to work some special top secret magic into the car. Pretty much it's the equivalent to the car being the main character in an anime. If you believe hard enough, then the car can actually make 1,000 horsepower stock and destroy any other car it's up against. It all really comes down to the skill and will of the driver, something only intellectuals with a high IQ can really understand. So much like the Supra, Toyota worked the same thing into the 8.6 and turned their little economy family car into a legendary drift boy dream. What stopped Toyota from implementing this mysterious feature in their other cars is still unknown, but many think it has to do with an overall decline in the sports car market around this time. As the 80s and up to the late 90s marked the end of the Japanese sports car golden age, from then on, minivans, SUVs, and driver comforts became bigger sellers for the ever dorkier consumer versus sports cars that only real cool and cultured people could appreciate. I mean, nowadays these wusses don't want drift cars since they're more concerned about spilling their groceries or their children getting carsick. I mean, even today, only a handful of sports cars even come with manual transmissions, as weaklings complain about driving in traffic or having nightmares about stalling because they're incompetent drivers. They'd rather have a sports car for the bragging rights rather than to actually have fun driving it. Along with the mystical power the 86 possesses, the other key reason the car is so popular even to this day is because of its star appearance in a famous Japanese manga series. This almost goes without saying, as any 86 fan watching this probably already knows where this is going. The manga I'm talking about is, of course, the 1992 Tunnel Nuketada Sky Blue. This cult classic of a story follows the life of a high school boy and his car, a Panda 86. I mean, you know it's gonna be good when it opens with a beach day scene. Unfortunately, because of loose copyright laws in Japan, Tunnel Nuketada Sky Blue would be shamelessly and completely ripped off by a lesser known series just 3 years later. This manga and anime is called Initial D. If this happened in the US, there would be a big lawsuit over it, but sadly, Initial D was able to steal the main character's design, and the fact that he races an 86 in the exact same color. Even the love interests of both look very similar. Though never quite as popular as Tunnel Nuketada, Initial D has become a bit of an underground favorite by people who look past its knockoff origins. The story is similar and follows a high school boy who enters the street racing world in Japan. A key part of the races is drifting down the windy mountains of the country. Another iconic part is the main character also delivers tofu and drives with a water cup to make sure his driving is smooth enough. If he spills the water, then he damages the tofu. And I will say, being a long hatchback, the car looks very retro and also does in fact leave plenty of space for tofu, so it makes sense in Initial D. 86 fans also tend to prefer this series because while Tunnel Nuketada portrays the 86 in a more realistic way, Initial D plays more into the Supra power side and has the car street racing other cars with 2 to 3 times the power and capabilities and still win every time. Of course, some haters will say this is unrealistic, but true 86 enthusiasts know that a stock 86 can easily beat an RX-7 or GTR in real life as long as the driver believes hard enough. It's a classic case of get good. I mean, it's the same thing as Smash Bros player Hungrybox using Jigglypuff to whoop more sick characters like Fox and Captain Falcon. So we've talked about the history and we've talked about the cultural popularity of the 86, but how does the real life car actually drive? Well, it's truly a pleasure and may very well be one of the fastest cars I've ever driven. As mentioned, the true highlight of the car is, of course, the cornering capabilities and drifting. Now, to many of you young, early drivers watching, you gotta understand, real-life drifting isn't like Mario Kart. It's not as simple as holding down a button while turning to instantly drift. It takes a lot more precise and high-level skill. So here, I know I gave you a small taste earlier in the video, but as a very well-experienced driver, I'll show you how it's really done. Don't try this at home. Really, there isn't another car that can bust out a drift so effortlessly and smoothly. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of it still comes down to my own skill as a driver, but the car definitely is built for people like me who can take full advantage of its driving dynamics to unlock the high potential it has. And though it doesn't have the 1,000 horsepower like the Supra, I can feel that deep down it comes close to it. Maybe like 950 horsepower if I were to just guess. But if you tore out the whole interior like a true drift boy, then you'd more than make up for that in weight reduction anyways. Just be sure to throw it all in the dumpster. Though the 86 is easily a car that the average person looks at and thinks is a piece of junk beater, a true cultured car connoisseur understands and appreciates the infinite potential this simple car offers. If you can't beat a supercar on the back road in an 86, then you simply need to go back to driving school and get one of those stickers that say, "New driver, please be patient." The 86 is a car for the elite. While some people spend hundreds of thousands on expensive cars and countless mods, sometimes the fastest car around a track is the one you saw in an anime. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my patrons. With your donations, I plan on getting one of those sick cold air intakes for my 86. I think that'll bring the horsepower up by like 20 or so. Anyways, see y'all next time.